Hello, and welcome to the After Sermon Podcast, where we pick up all the bits from the cutting room floor that didn't make it into our sermons and break them down, and occasionally we may just search for love, on days such as these. And on this Valentine's Day special, we are looking at the sermon, The Prodigal Wife. Hi, my name is Christopher, and ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat today because this is one of the most special podcasts, I must say, that we have ever done in ASP history. Joining us in the studio today, we have returning guest Mr. Michael Godfrey.
Hey everyone.
And that is not all. Returning in spectacular fashion via the magic that is the interwebs, that is Skype, we have with us today co-host and today's preacher, Jesse Marks.
Hello everyone, it is good to be on the interwebs today.
It's good to have you back. We haven't had you on since episode 2, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Which was your sermon, Out of the Boat from Comfort to Courage.
That's right.
This is a recurring theme, eh? I'm droning only on my episodes.
Yeah. This guy. No, I wanted to bring you back on a very special podcast, make a big triumphant entry, and I think from now on we'll have you on as a more regular guest in the foreseeable future, so you guys can look forward to having more episodes with Jesse as one of our co-hosts here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. And make sure to listen to the very end of our podcast today as we continue our tradition of doing something a little bit fun on our ASP specials, as we do a little matchmaking for our young bachelor here, Mr. Jesse.
That sounds interesting.
Alright, well, let's get into the recap, but just before we do, if you haven't watched the sermon, The Prodigal Wife, go to the link below and come back here later, because this podcast is full of spoilers. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the recap. Jesse, what was the sermon about?
Recap. Well, if you haven't watched the sermon, which I highly recommend you just stop this video right now and go back and watch it, it's about the story of Hosea. So, if you've seen the sermon, you should know a little bit about Hosea, but essentially he's a prophet in the northern kingdom, which is Israel, in that area, and he's called by God to preach a message of salvation to the Israelites because imminent destruction is coming by the Assyrians, and he essentially sent by God to save them. Now, what is interesting about this prophet is his whole life is like a symbol for what he is preaching. So God calls him to marry a prostitute, essentially. And this whole, back and forth between the Gomer, that's the name of the prostitute, his wife, just rejects him, walks away from Hosea. And God calls Hosea to go back, to find Gomer, and to love her again, to recommit the marriage. And this whole thing is a symbol for God's love, of how he loves the Israelites, how they have turned away from God. But yet, God comes back and he loves them yet again. Mm-hmm. And then I look at the story of the prodigal son, and I compare those two stories, and essentially from that, I gain the conclusion that, you know what, God's love for Israel is the exact same love for us. And we have turned away from God time and time again, like Israel, but yet God still loves us. And then from that, I kind of challenge the people. It's always good to have a challenge at the end. So I challenge, if God can love us, if we continually reject God and walk away from him, and God can still love us, that should challenge us to love the people who we find hard to love in our lives. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's pretty much the sermon.
Awesome.
So guys, what did you think of the sermon?
Well, I really liked the topic of Hosea in general. I remember while you were writing the sermon and we were discussing it every now and then when we'd catch up, I'd always kind of get a bit enthusiastic because I really like the book of Hosea. It's one of those kind of hidden gems in the Bible that most people sort of read over or miss.
They skim over it. Yeah.
They skim over it, and it's really deep, it's really poetic, and it's got a whole lot of really intense and lovely language. And so I really liked just the fact that it's about Hosea in general. But I also liked, what I didn't expect was to then sort of have it turned on me on a different aspect. The challenge at the end that you gave about loving the unlovable, I didn't see that coming. Because what I'd always pulled out of it was that God is always willing to come back to his people despite the fact that they may have turned their backs on him. He still wants to keep that covenant going. He wants to pursue it, and we always have that opportunity. So that's what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it for it to become, we should try and show the same love that God does. And it really just makes logical sense when you put it in the context of Hosea. We should be showing the same unconditional love that God showed to us. Everyone makes mistakes, and yet while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. If he can show that amount of love, surely we can, try and act nice to some people who may give us a bit of trouble in some difficult times. So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, well said. Well, I can see, Jesse, that you put a lot of thought into the sermon, into the preparation, the planning, because it was really well set out, and I'm sure it was. I can see that it was well thought out as well. From the sermon title, "The Prodigal Wife," it got me thinking. I was thinking, well, I wonder what the sermon's going to be about. Is it going to be about the prodigal son? There's no wife in that story? How are you going to kind of put it all together? The bit about Hosea, like you said, Chris, was really interesting because it's something that a lot of people don't cover, don't talk about very much. I don't think. Before you'd preached, I don't think I'd read Hosea. Well, definitely not the whole book. I don't even think I'd read 20% of the book. It's something that I didn't know very much about at all. I knew the basic overarching story, but that's about all. So it was really, really interesting for you to use that, and then to overlay that with the prodigal son, and to look at the comparison, look at the similarities and the differences. And then I really like that you took 2 points out of it instead of the 1 point. That we became kind of the protagonist, the prodigal son. We became like that person when you said that.
Yep. Okay. Give us 2 seconds. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, sync. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, and I really like that you had 2 points that you brought out of it instead of 1. That you so we kind of became like the protagonist, the prodigal son in the parable. You kind of applied that to us, and you said, well, we maybe saying that we're all harlots is going a bit too far, but definitely the Bible says the wages of sin is death, and all who have sinned have fallen short of the glory of God.
We've all committed spiritual adultery.
Yeah.
In that sometimes whenever we sin, we're kind of betraying that commitment that we made.
That's right. And so in that sense, we have kind of wandered away from the Father. And so I got that, and I realized that that's what you were saying, and I kind of half expected that to be the point that you were going to draw out of it. But then, like Chris said, you drew the other point out of it too, and instead of just becoming the prodigal son in the story, you also said we can be kind of, in a sense, like the Father in the story, and we can love the unlovable. That we have this duty to, just as Christ loved us, and just as the Father forgives us and loves us and shows mercy on us, we should do the same for other people. I thought it was really cool.
Nice. Alright, well, let's get the ball rolling by going to our segment, The Drawing Board. Michael, what is the drawing board?
Well, the drawing board is where we discuss the sources, inspirations, and goals of the sermon in order to better understand the sermon in question.
Right. So the drawing board. So, to be honest, the sources for this, you may find it hard finding one of these sources. So I've got this Bible called the MacArthur Study Bible. Essentially, it's the Bible, but almost every verse has a commentary by this preacher called John MacArthur. So I got a lot of insight from him actually. Specifically, I think if you remember my sermon, I talked about the cost that Hosea bought Gomer with. I think it was like 1 1/2 homers of barley and like 12 pieces of silver or something like that. Anyways, I got that when I said that was the actual price Jesus was sold into, Judas betrayed Jesus for. So I got that comparison from that. But no, it's a really good resource if you want to look that up. Other than that, probably just the Bible. That was the other big source. And one other one too. The Bible Project. There's a little video on Hosea. That was a good resource as well.
Yeah.
Encourage everyone to look that up.
Nice. And I suppose the goal was pretty self-evident, to be able to challenge the congregation to essentially love the unlovable, as well as realize the unconditional love that God has for all of us.
Yeah, I've heard of the Bible Project. I think they do Nehemiah as well. Is that the same?
The Bible Project has done every
book of the Bible.
They've done every book in the Bible at this point. I know we've recommended them before on previous podcasts. They're really good. They put out some really good stuff.
Well, that's just the standout one for me. That's the one I remember seeing a YouTube video of them talking about that.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get to the cutting room floor then, which is the main meat of our podcast. Michael, what is the cutting room floor?
The cutting room floor is the segment where we discuss the parts of the sermon that didn't make it into the final product.
Awesome. All right, take us through, Jesse. What didn't make the final cut?
Sure. So I thought to start off, we'll go through some fun facts. Fun facts. So no, I've had lots of fun with this. So okay. So first of all, I think Hosea is very relevant. I mean, if you guys didn't know, some scholars call Hosea the John of the Old Testament, which I think is pretty cool. So John being the apostle of love from the New Testament, because all through out the book of Hosea, it's just about the love of God. It just goes, it repeats over and over again. It's all throughout the book. So that's pretty cool. Hosea, the John of the Old Testament.
Yeah. Which you wouldn't expect, especially since a lot of people, when they go like, hey, what's your favourite gospel? They go, oh, Gospel of John. But if you're ever to ask, hey, what's your favourite prophetic book? I doubt you'd find many people will go, oh, Hosea, man. But yet the themes are still consistently very similar. I think that's cool, yeah.
So yeah, as you said, it's the hidden gem of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hosea is, I think, the first of the 12 minor prophets in the Bible. So if you didn't know, there's major prophets and there's minor prophets in the Bible. So essentially, the difference between a major and a minor prophet is not the fact that Isaiah was just so much better and grander than Isaiah or something like that. It's pretty much the content of their prophecy. So whoever prophesied the most, they would be called a major prophet, and the people who didn't prophesy as much, they would be a minor prophet. Like
that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. Also, too, you guys would know, everyone listening would probably know Jonah. You've ever heard his name before. So both Jonah and Hosea are the only writing prophets of the Northern Kingdom, Israel. That's a little fun tip.
Wow.
Also, too, so referencing back to Isaiah again, when Hosea was preaching in Israel, guess who was preaching in Judah? None other than Isaiah. So,
wow.
If you read the book of Hosea and Hosea together, yes, this is pretty much happening at the same time, which is pretty cool, I think.
Nice.
So I don't know about you guys. I like to have a little fun. Why not all the prophets just... imagine if the prophets had like this little gathering spot. You know, they got together one day to just talk and to chat and eat. Hey, what's it like? What about you?
They'd probably all just be going, oh my goodness, you have no idea what Israel's like. They won't listen to a word I say. Man, I'll trade you that for Judah any day, man. Try dealing with those tribes.
Exactly. That's pretty cool. Other thing too. So they say... scholars suggest that he had a ministry of probably about 40 to 45 years.
Wow.
Pretty lengthy time, considering the state of Israel. Also too, he went through the last 6 kings of Israel. So he had to deal with the last 6 kings. Now, if you're questioning, okay, how can there be 6 kings in 45 years? This also gives you a picture of the times that Hosea was preaching at. So 4 of the last 6 kings were actually assassinated by this successor.
Wow.
So that's
exactly.
It.
That really shows the moral bankruptcy of the time.
Yeah, sure does.
It's crazy. Anyways, so that's what Hosea is having to deal with, essentially. And as I said before, Hosea was actually the last prophet to Israel. So, I don't know, that would be kind of depressing, wouldn't it? All your work just coming to nothing, essentially.
Pretty much. And then you got to start anew and start afresh every time a new king comes in, having to try and convince them of your message again and again.
I know, and that's amazing that he went through 6 of them.
When you think about it, he's really persevering through a lot of stuff. I think I might have given up by king 2 or 3, to be honest.
Could that be some type of record, Jesse? 6 kings? How many other prophets would have experienced 6 different changes of leadership?
Yeah, not many, I would think. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Right. Then to end it off, I just thought I'd give you guys a reading tip. If you want to read through the book of Hosea, I highly recommend it. There's just a little thing you might find helpful. So, throughout the book, it talks about Israel a lot. That's the kingdom that it's based in. But from time to time, you'll come across this name called Ephraim. And you'll probably find it a bit confusing because the Bible, or Hosea, seems to interchange this name, Ephraim and Israel. It's really not that confusing. Ephraim is the largest tribe of Israel. If you didn't know, Israel was comprised of 10 tribes, and Ephraim was the largest one. So when Hosea is saying Ephraim, really he's talking about Israel, the broader Israel. So if you find that a bit confusing, remember that, and hopefully that should help.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Good tip.
That brings us to the end of the fun facts. Now, I'll just, let's talk about some of the things I wanted to add, but because of time and everything, didn't get.
Sure.
Okay, so
cool.
Could we go to Hosea chapter 1 and maybe read through verse 1 through to 9? Sure. Give us a big picture of what I want to talk about.
Awesome. And so what was the particular reasoning behind cutting out this specific part?
Yeah, some of it would have taken the focus out of my sermon.
Yeah.
So a little bit off tangent, off topic. So for that reason, I had to cut it out. Plus, my sermon was just getting way too big.
Yeah.
Too much to kind of memorize.
I thought it was a good length. The way you cut it down, it was about 28 minutes or something. It was pretty good.
Yeah, good length.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with what happened. So yeah.
So Hosea chapter 1, 1 to 9.
That's it.
Would you like me to read it for you?
If you can, thanks.
Sure. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. When the Lord began to speak by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, take a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord." So he went and took Gomer the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, "Call his name Jezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel." And she conceived again and bore a daughter. Then God said to him, "Call her daughter Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah, will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword or battle, by horses or horsemen." Now when she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, she conceived and bore a son. Then God said, "Call his name Lo Ami, or Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God."
Thank you, Mr. Godfrey.
No problem.
So yeah, pretty much I want to focus on the sons and the daughter, what their names mean. I wanted to discuss that Hosea didn't just have a prophetic symbol for him and his wife, their relationship. The prophetic symbol actually encompassed his whole family, which I find incredible.
Wow.
So, as you read, God instructed Hosea to name his children certain names. They're odd names from if you look from our perspective in our culture, but I'm sure they were perfectly normal in the Israelite culture. So yeah, we've got Jezreel, that's the first son. Then we've got the daughter, her name is Lo Ruhamah, and then we've got Lo Ami, I believe. So let's look at the first son, Jezreel. What does that mean? So if you remember from Michael's reading, it means God will scatter. Now this is talking about the Assyrian conquest of Israel. As I mentioned before, Israel was destroyed. Hosea was the last prophet to Israel, and the people who conquered them was Assyria, the Assyrian nation. Now this name, Jezreel, as I said before, is talking about the scattering of Israel. because when the Assyrians conquered them, they took some of the Israelites back, as captives, obviously, but a lot of the Israelites just got dispersed among the nations, which, hence scattering. Now, let's look at the daughter. What does her name mean? So his daughter's name was Lo Rama, meaning not pitied.
It's a pretty dodgy name for a child.
Yeah, when I was reading it, I was just thinking,
not
wow.
pitied.
Not pitied. Like, and a daughter as well.
Yeah.
You don't name a daughter not pitied. But no. So essentially what that means is God would no longer show his favor toward Israel. Time and time again, nations would come trying to conquer Israel, but God would protect them. He would cover them, like the verse says, like a hen covers her chicks with his wings. But here is the time that eventually God would have to withdraw his favor from Israel, and the Assyrian nation would come in and destroy them. But imagine a name essentially meaning all of that.
Wow.
It's crazy. And finally, his third son, Lo Ami, meaning not my people. Now this is actually really crazy, because essentially it's talking about God finally giving up on Israel. No more coming back, no more restored relationships. God was actually saying, okay, you don't want me anymore, so be it. I'm not going to pursue
What's
you
interesting
anymore.
is really God is just kind of respecting their decision. Because part of the covenant idea was that God would favor them and protect them so long as that they kept these commandments, or at least, made the ambition to try and do so. But when the Judah and Israel have been actively and intentionally, purposefully disobeying God in almost every single way possible and shown no sign of repentance, God just says, I'll respect that decision. I'll take away my favor, and let's see how you fare without me. And also part of I think the invasion coming in would be as a result of God taking away that protection, but it's also as part of a judgment, which is what a lot of the other major and minor prophets after Hosea talk about as well. If you don't stop this soon the judgment will come and you'll be invaded by other people. So it's interesting how you said Hosea was the first of the minor prophets, right? Yeah, he was kind of like a precursor. Yeah. He's kind of showing what's going to happen if Israel doesn't pick up its game soon, which is interesting.
So also we mentioned before, like Lo Ami, not pity. That's a pretty rough name. But all these things were pretty rough. I mean, what would it be like growing up having a name that essentially meant, okay, God was one day going to walk away from us. One day we will be scattered and conquered among the nations. Like, it's crazy. That would affect your childhood. So why would God do this? That was the question that I was kind of wrestling with when I studied this topic. But I think there's actually a very good reason. As I mentioned before, Hosea was the last prophet to Israel, like the very last one. This was Israel's last chance to repent and turn back to God, essentially. So I think God was just literally throwing everything he could to bring back Israel towards him, bring back Israel to restore the relationship back to God. And if you think about it, symbolism is powerful, really. Most humans are usually visual. So when they would look at Hosea and his wife and his 3 children, all of that would testify to the fact that God was reaching out back to Israel. He was reaching out, trying to pull them back. And a prophetic family, that's hard to miss or dismiss, I think.
Definitely.
So also too, Hosea was actually, I'll put it this way. Hosea wasn't just preaching and speaking the word of God, what God told him to do. He was acting it out. He actually, in a sense, became God's message, which I think is really unique and powerful. So I think we can learn something from this as well. I think it could even be a Valentine's kind of thing today. Valentine's tie-in. So let's not just tell our spouses or our husbands or wives or children that we love them. Let's just write a little note to them saying how much we care about them. Let's actually do something to express our love to them. times. Let's embrace this whole Hosea type thing of becoming our message. Yeah, I think that's a nice little time for Valentine's Day today. So yeah, another interesting fact is that the last prophet and the last king of Israel had the same name.
No idea.
Do you guys know that? You wouldn't pick up on it because if you read most translations, they say the king's name was Hosea or Hosea or something like that. But really, if you go back to the Hebrew, it's the exact same name. There's also something really cool about this name. This name means salvation. So let's backtrack a little bit. Okay, so Hosea and Gomer, their symbolic reference. They are a prophetic symbol. Let me stop there.
No worries. And we're back in 3, 2, go.
So let's just backtrack for a second. Let's go to Hosea and Gomer. They were a prophetic symbol for God's relationship with Israel. And we just discovered that it wasn't just Hosea and Gomer, it was actually their 3 children. They were tied in this prophetic symbolism. But now we find out that the very name of Hosea the prophet ties in as well, because his name means salvation. And not only that, but the last king of Israel, his name also means salvation. So if you tie all these things together, it's just mind-blowing. This picture we get of God reaching out through all these avenues to Israel, saying, come back to me. I want to be your God, your Father again. So I think that's really beautiful, to be honest. So yeah, that kind of wraps us up for Hosea chapter 1. Let's move on to Hosea chapter 2.
Hosea chapter 2. And we'll be, for the listeners at home who want to read along, we'll be reading from verses 5 through to 8.
I can read that one if you want.
Sure, go for it.
Says this: For their mother has played the harlot. She who conceived them has behaved shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up your way with thorns, and wall her in, so that she cannot find her paths. She will chase her lovers, but not overtake them. Yes, she will seek them, but not find them. Then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. For she did not know that I gave her grain, new wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. So, just before we discuss these texts, I just want to give you guys a little heads up when you read through chapter 2. There's a bit of language and wording that's confronting, plain and simple, when you read through Hosea 2. Go ahead, read it. I won't tell you today on the podcast, but you will find it for yourselves when you read it. It can be quite blunt and to the point. So there's an important thing to remember. When you're going through this chapter, I briefly mentioned it in my sermon. If you do a surface level, just a surface level reading of this chapter, it seems like it's Hosea talking to Gomer. The whole chapter is essentially like this court case. And it seems like it's Hosea bringing Gomer to this court case to be tried. But really, if you search for the text a little deeper, it's actually God talking to Israel. And it just uses, once again, Hosea and Gomer as a prophetic symbol for God's dealing with Israel. Now, that may sound simple, but keep that in mind when you're reading this text, and it's going to make a lot more sense. So that's just a little heads up for you guys. And there's just a few things that I want to touch on this from what we just read today as well. So we read that it was God who gave the Israelites rain and grain and all their blessings in due season, the wine and the wool and everything like that. But because of their idolatry, because of their wickedness, because they turned away from God, God punishes them. Like that's nothing new. Just going to say, we've heard that before in the Bible. But these texts also give us an added insight as to why God punishes his people. Why God would withdraw these blessings that he originally gave them. Why would God do that? It's really like any good father. God takes away these blessings to remind Israel that it was actually God in the first place who gave them the blessings. That kind of makes sense. Yeah. So I guess you could think of it like this, some illustration. So you've got a good father. let's say he's a rich father. He gives his son for his birthday a Lamborghini, let's say. A nice red Lamborghini, very nice car. Anyways, the son takes the Lamborghini, obviously. He would accept a gift like that. And he takes it and he just goes wild with the car. He starts getting involved in like street races. He gets a lot of money.
Sounds like someone we know.
Oh, does it?
We won't name them, but keep going.
Keep going.
Oh, good. And then he gets even deeper. He starts using the money to buy drugs, and he's just messing up his life. What would the father do to correct that issue?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Well, logically, I think the father would have to
take away the present.
Yeah. The present is conditional in that he uses it appropriately.
Exactly.
That's what's expected of him in his part of the bargain or the deal.
Exactly. And taking away the car would fix two issues, really. First of all, it would fix the issues of the street racing and the drugs, that's obvious. But it would also take away all the time-consuming things that the son had been doing, essentially to take away his time. Take away the time he would spend with his father, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So it would really fix those two issues. He would stop doing all those bad things, and he would have more time with the father. And I think that, in a way, is what God is doing with the Israelites here, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, let's move on from Hosea chapter 2. Now, we didn't spend much time in it, but I highly recommend, once again, go back and read through the chapter. There is so much in it. But now I want to move to my absolute favorite chapter.
Ooh.
It is good. I'll tell you that right now.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. It's Hosea chapter 11.
You got that one, Chris?
I do. Isaiah chapter 11, and for our listeners at home, we're reading in verse 8. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I set you like Zeboim? My heart churns within me. My sympathy is stirred.
Yeah, what a verse.
Poetic.
I love that verse. To me, it really just sums up the book of Hosea in that one verse. It's just like God reaching out, God's heart aching for Israel. He's like, I think I mentioned in my sermon, but just in case, for repetition's sake, Admah and Zeboim, those two cities were two cities that were destroyed alongside Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, wow.
If you guys
that's right, I remember that.
Familiar with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So God's just saying, Israel, I don't want to do this to you. I don't want to completely destroy you like I did with these two cities, Admah and Zeboim. So would you please just come back to me? And there's a few things that really just struck out to me when I read this text, specifically the last two lines. So first of all, God says that his heart churns within me. Like, that's very poetic language. But and just on the surface level, that just is so powerful. But the literal word for churns here is turn over. So let's just insert turn over into the text. So my heart turns over within me. So whenever God thinks of Israel, his heart is being described as turning over. Like, that's crazy. God's heart is just like doing a little backflip inside.
Yeah.
When he thinks of Israel. And as I said in my sermon, that same love is what he expresses toward us. And that's crazy. And the last line too, my sympathy is stirred. When I think of this, I just think of like God up in heaven in the kitchen, just stirring this big pot of stew, the sympathy stew. Anyways, yeah, he's just stirring away, making this healthy, delicious stew. And he wants to give it to his kids. He wants to give it to the children of Israel. But they just don't want it. They want candy. They want all these sweet things. That the pop has made up this healthy bowl of stew, and they don't want it. And to me, that makes it just so sad. And yet we do the same thing, really, as well, as I discussed in my sermon.
Yeah, and that's
as well.
crazy comparing that to us.
So yeah, that's Hosea 11:8 for you guys. I love that verse so much.
Yeah.
Cool. I believe that takes us to our final round.
Yes.
The bonus round?
I love bonus round.
We're bringing it back as a so
Yeah.
it's good.
We didn't get one last
My-
episode, so I'm happy. I'm happy we've brought it
I
back.
think it's almost a Jesse exclusive.
I don't mind.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Michael, could you take us away with the next
Sure.
verse?
Oh, thanks. Romans 6:23. It says this: "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord."
That's actually not the verse I was looking for.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
But my bad. No, it was actually
good verse.
the one Chris quoted the first couple of minutes. Anyways, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
Right.
That's-
Um,
You can look that up.
Yeah.
But
What is that?
the point I want to make from this is just a little comparison between the story of Hosea and that verse. So Christ died for us while we were still sinners, just like Hosea purchased Gomer really at her lowest point. She was in the slave market, accused of adultery. Like how low can you
Yeah.
get lower than that? And in the same way, Christ died for us. He didn't wait for us to get perfect, to obey all the commandments and reach that level that God wants us to reach. While we were still sinners, while we were still messed up, like Gomer, He came in and purchased us. I think that's really cool. So, next
And that
verse.
verse there, I just found it. Romans 5:8.
Thank you.
For
Cool.
anyone
Thank you
wanting
very
to
much.
Cross-reference that. There we go.
Got to have the good crossings. Sweet. Hosea chapter 2 and verse 8. That's our next verse. So back to Hosea chapter 2. Would you mind reading that out?
Sure. Hosea 2:8. For she did not know that I gave her grain, new wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal.
It's a sad picture, really. God was giving all these blessings to Israel. He was bestowing all their wine, their grain, as we read before. But they were attributing all those blessings to Baal, this fake god. Which is so sad. Like, while Israel was rejecting God, God was still blessing them. And they just completely were oblivious to that. They were just attributing all these awesome blessings to Baal, which is I believe it's the Phoenician sun god, if you guys are interested. Anyways, another interesting point too is that Baal was the god of part of what Baal encompassed was he was a god of rain and of fertility, I believe, which is very interesting because part of the things that God took away were rain and obviously, I guess in one sense, the fertility of the earth, their grain, their wine, all that sort of stuff. God taking a jab at their God. Okay, you guys worship Baal for fertility, for harvest, for rain, all that sort of stuff. Okay, I'm going to take that away, and now what's Baal going to do for you?
Yeah. It's similar to how, if you look at each of the 10 plagues in Egypt, God kind of usurps in the same way the role of one of their Egyptian gods.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
yeah.
oh, you have a god of the river? Let's see him stop me from turning it to blood.
God of the sun, well, we'll have darkness.
Or go darkness. Everything. God of the skies or gnats. I'm not sure what the god is for all those, but
Anubis, god of death.
God of death. Each of them, yeah, God kind of he shows them how inadequate the idols are and where all of these, where the real power is. He shows them where the real power is, and that's
Just
in
like
him.
with the snakes, where Moses' serpent was the one that ate up the other ones.
Exactly. So yeah, God kind of does a 180 on their philosophy, their religion, their worldview. Just to, I guess, as we said before, to re-edify the point that God was trying to save them. He was trying to wipe the slate clean of any lies and falsifiable facts, anything that was encompassing their worldview, hindering them from coming back to God.
Nice.
So yeah. Another thing too, we could also apply this to our day and age. This could be maybe a controversial topic to some extent, but it's definitely true today that most of the Western world, Australia included, attributes our blessings, our cultural diversity, all that sort of stuff, economic growth, to science, to an uncorrupt political system, stuff like that. You would agree to that. But the thing is, if you pull back the curtain, look back to the foundations of our society, we are really a Christian society from the foundational level.
Yeah.
We were, even Australia, if you look into the history, we were brought up to be a Christian nation. And I believe those Christian principles are the foundation, if you will, for all the blessings we experience today. So I think that's interesting. In a similar sense, we are attributing our blessings to maybe not necessarily the wrong source, but not the main source, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Good point.
So let's go to our final verse for today, our final couple of verses. It's back to Hosea 1. This time we're going to read from verse 10 to the first verse of chapter 2. It's a little different, but if you look up in the Bible, it'll make sense. It's where the line of thought follows on. So yeah, I can read that if you like.
Go for it.
Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass, in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, there it shall be said to them, You are the sons of the living God. Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and appoint for themselves one head, and they shall come out of the land. For great will be the day of Jezreel. Say to your brethren, my people, and to your sisters, mercy is stone. That is a verse.
Nice.
So keeping in mind that we just talked about how Israel was going to be completely destroyed, what does this verse mean?
That is a good question, considering the context, the larger context. Yeah.
Because we know now that like when the Assyrians conquered Israel, unlike Judah, they didn't come back. They didn't get restored. So what does it mean? What's it talking about? If you go to Romans and Galatians, back to the epistles of Paul, Paul actually explains this for us. So we won't look at that today, but look through Romans and Galatians, and you'll find there that the Gentile world comprises of both the Gentiles, which is everyone who is not a Jew. They make up spiritual Israel, which is interesting. So Israel, in a sense, wasn't completely destroyed. If you go back to Hosea 11:8, what we read before, where God is saying, I don't want to make you like Admah, I don't want to make you like Zoan, those two cities that got completely destroyed and never restored. In a way, God didn't have to completely destroy Israel. In a sense he did, but not really, because finally, in the end, God would call the Gentiles spiritual Israel.
Right.
Not just a Gentile, Jew as well. Jew and Gentile, they comprise spiritual Israel. So God got his wish, which I think is really cool. He just loved Israel so much, he just couldn't let go of them. So, in the end, we all are here, spiritual Israel, which I think is really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
That kind of
All right, so that wraps up the cutting room floor. Jesse, do you have any recommended readings for our listeners at home?
So yeah, definitely the Bible Project, their video on Hosea, as we said before, really good stuff.
A lot of the
If you can
videos.
get, yeah, all of them are really good. If you can get yourself a copy of the MacArthur Study Bible, you can look up those notes. Some of them may be online, so yeah, there's that. And obviously the Bible.
Yeah.
Just look up Hosea.
Very reliable source there.
Nice.
Very reliable.
We referred to it several times just in the last hour.
We did. So now, thank you.
Sounds good. All right, well, welcome to the Valentine's special segment of the podcast, appropriately titled, whatever we want to call it. You can call it Ship It, The Christian Bachelor, I don't know what to call it. We've got a lot of different names. But now, our young co-host Jesse is a very young and eligible bachelor, so we thought that we would help Jesse in his search for love today, on this Valentine's Day, by browsing through some different profiles on AdventistSinglesConnection.com.
Good luck, Jesse.
So we're going to go through. It's free to browse, which is good, because
That is good.
I don't feel like paying necessarily.
I agree.
What do you do if they ask you to pay on a Sabbath? Oh.
Moral dilemmas.
Moral dilemmas. All right, so we got some questions that we're going to need to answer. Jesse, you are a man. This is correct?
I think so. So,
You think so?
Good to know.
What is your height, Jesse?
oh, that's a good question.
Are you 6'1"?
6 foot, 6'1",
Yeah.
6'2"?
If you look at my driver's license, which is probably what the authorities would look at, it's definitely not 6'1". But let's go 6'1". Let's go.
Let's go
Okay.
6'1". Let's
We're
boost
not
it.
bending the truth.
All right, so next question. What is your body type? We got slender, average, athletic, large but muscular, washboard, if you want to fill that one out. I should maybe lose a few, full-figured, or I will tell you later.
Quite
In
the
that
diversity
case,
of options.
Let's go. Wait, let's just go average because
Let's go average. I like that.
Nice.
That sounds like a fair, honest answer.
Yep. Way
As
to not
opposed
bend
to
the
our-
truth.
As opposed to our height one.
Uh-huh.
All right, eye color.
And your options, you've got black, blue, brown, grey, green, hazel, red, violet, and other.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone with red eyes. Isn't that like they're sick?
Or a vampire?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a good question. My eye color is changing currently. I think it's probably like a combination of green and blue. Probably more so green than blue at the moment. So go green.
Okey-doke. Green it is.
Yep. Sounds good.
What is your hair color?
I would say like a light brown.
Strawberry
Yeah.
blonde. There's an option here.
Is
Strawberry
that
blonde.
the
or
hair
just,
color that strawberry shortcake has? Perhaps?
There
Oh,
is
shit.
just strawberry with no blonde.
I wasn't even aware strawberry was a color. I mean, like hair color at least.
Do you feel that your hair is silver, not grey? Silver.
All right, if we're keeping with it, it shouldn't be black. Should be blackberry. Blonde
Blackberry.
is pineapple
Mhm.
or lemon.
Yep.
Grey is just rotting fruit.
And dark brown is. You know, I'm offended that they don't have green on this list.
No broccoli heads.
Oh. Alright, Jesse. I reckon light brown.
Light
What do you
brown.
think?
All right. Ethnicity. You look pretty Caucasian to me.
I might be. So
You've got other options
We've
here.
got some other options, but I think we can.
Other is one of the other options. They're being politically correct.
All right. What is your education? See, I feel like you're studying to be a. You're going to be studying a bachelor's degree course.
So we could just put bachelors.
If we're going to the future, why not aspire even
Jump
higher?
ahead.
Let's go PhD.
And I accidentally clicked. I don't have an education. So
Right underneath the PhD button. Sorry, you just went from having a PhD to having no education in a matter of seconds. Good luck. There'll be plenty of matches out there for you, don't worry.
Oh gosh. All
We
right.
can fix it up right now. What is your occupation?
Oh, okay. Since I have no education, that could be kind of difficult.
Well, you're on this show, aren't you?
Yeah, professional
That is
podcast
good.
is a noble job.
Well, if the definition of a professional is someone who earns money,
Then just podcaster. Yeah, if you're not earning any money, so you're just a podcaster.
sorry, Jesse, we're not paying you for this. We do appreciate your time, though.
We're also not sponsored by Adventist Singles. We're getting no money from doing this.
Just a disclaimer.
Okay. How often do you have a ciggy? I'm hoping never.
How often do you smoke on a scale of never to whenever I can?
How about I've read Ministry of Healing, thank you. Don't patronize me. No smoking.
go ahead.
We know the health message.
Sure.
And how often do you drink? He's read Proverbs. He doesn't drink. Wine is a mocker.
Proverbs 3, is that right?
I thought it was in the 20s.
It could be in the 20s.
Fact
I could
check.
be way off. Yeah.
Alright,
I'll
what
have
is
to
your
look up
marital status? You're single and have never been married.
Yeah.
Alright, about children.
Now, your options here. I do not have children but would like to. I have children, I want more. I don't have children, I want children. I have children, I don't want any more children. I have children and I would welcome your children. I do not have children, but I would welcome your children. I'm open to all possibilities, or just ask me.
Did you catch them all? Do you?
Well,
Do you want me to go through them again?
let's just say ask me.
Oh,
Ask me.
surprise. Okay.
It's a closed book.
Alright, so now I've tried putting in Australia, but every time I do, it says
Must supply a valid region.
So apparently if you're from any country other than the US of A, that's not valid.
Yeah, we tried the United Kingdom as well and it wouldn't work, so...
There is no country but America.
America! Sorry, so you can't be from Australia in this, you have to be from America. So
I hope you can fake an accent for your sake.
Good luck. You can say that you moved there recently.
Alright, here's where it gets interesting. If you were ever on the run and you had to use a fake name, a pseudonym, what would it be?
That's a good question. Let's go Frank.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Frank,
We're bending the truth enough.
White.
Frank White.
Are you being quite frank?
I like it. And I'm going to set your birthday as Valentine's Day 1990.
A few years older than you already are.
Yeah.
I was born to find love.
Born for love. Born to love.
Okie doke.
Mr. Frank White, you're ready to go.
Username is QuiteFrank1990.
Mm-hmm.
Your password...
We're not going to tell the good folks at home, or else they're going to go into your account and start tampering with all your matches.
Email, done. Alright, describe yourself and your personality.
Looks like you've got about 50 words in this text box.
How would you describe yourself, Mr. Frank White?
I am quite frank.
About everything?
About it.
There we go. I am quite frank about everything. Alright, I think we need to cap it off with at least one more sentence.
So far we've got, I'm quite frank about everything. I love long walks on the beach, ice cream, and puppies.
We should change it up a little bit. Put something out there that's unexpected.
Mhm.
What do you
Yeah, what's something you like doing? Do you like collecting something? Stamp collecting? Is that too mainstream?
I
That's too
collect.
mainstream.
I said I love puppies. I collect lost puppies.
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
How can you not like a guy who collects lost puppies?
That's
You're gonna get a whole lot of...
That's the high ranger. That's
You won't end up with any crazy cat ladies.
That's right, no cat ladies.
Okay, there we go. Alright. I confirm that Fred agreed to terms, conditions of service and the privacy statement continue.
Jesse, have you read the terms and conditions? Would you like to send you the privacy statement?
You know what? I haven't, so...
Unable to process your registration.
What?
Please try again later.
Was it because we put down Frank White?
Ugh.
I'm telling you,
They've got a troll filter.
Exactly. I mean, you even put down a legit email address. I thought you were going to put down a fake one, but you didn't.
We were serious. We legitimately were looking for love here.
You're going to get some angry emails coming in. I can tell you that right now.
I don't know the email address. Oh well.
Not from them, from Adminasingles.
Oh, from Admin Singles. Maybe. Who knows? This never got through. They just don't want it. Oh well. We may have been a bit unlucky in finding love today, but hopefully in the future, in person, I believe you will.
That's
I
right.
believe it, you.
Jesse, you're more than capable of finding love in person. You don't need to use any dating websites.
Thank you for the moral support.
And by the way, for listeners at home, if you're thinking of looking up Mr. Frank White on Adventist Singles Connection, I would not bother for two reasons. One, we haven't even been able to get in.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reason.
And two, if we were to get in, we probably would have got rid of it so we're not breaking someone's poor heart.
That's right, we really don't want to mess with people on this very credible website.
No, we don't want to mess with people, so you won't be able to find Mr. Frank White there anyway.
But if you want it, you can find him in person.
You can.
His mobile number is... Just kidding.
Well, speaking of finding him, other places than the website, Mr. Jesse Marks, where can these people find you?
Sure. So I have my YouTube account. It's called simply Jesse Marks. So look that up. I'm sure it'll be
Awesome.
at the link in the description.
Yeah, we'll make sure the link is in the description for the sermon and for the YouTube channel.
Definitely.
There you go.
And Michael, where can these people find you?
Oh, easy. Again, link in the description. It's just Michael Godfrey. That's the name of the channel. Encourage you to go check it out.
Cool.
And Chris, what about you? Where can everyone find you?
Yep, you can find me down at my channel Christopher Peterson, and that's Peterson with an S-E-N, not S-O-N. It's the Danish spelling, the proper spelling. So if you're looking for Peterson, you won't find me. Look for Peterson.
Go to the description. It's the best place.
Yeah,
Find
easiest way to
everything
find
there.
it.
Easy.
Well, there we go. That concludes today's Valentine's Day special of the podcast. I really enjoyed being able to do this. I've actually been wanting to do an after sermon podcast for The Prodigal Wife for a while now, but I knew this really fit in with the theme of unconditional love and all that, so I really wanted to keep it for this. So I'm really glad that we finally got to do it, and we got to have Jesse back on, who we haven't had in a while, so it's great to have him back.
Thanks very much for being here, Jesse.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of today's podcast. And with that said, have a happy Valentine's Day and
Good night.
night.